Good day everyone. Today we will be discussing the 2D animation process. 2D animation is the art of creating movement using flat drawings with only height and width. Before an animation comes to life, it goes through important stages such as pre-production, production, and post-production. Each stage has its own purpose, from planning the story to designing characters and finally bringing everything together and to a finished animation. In this report, we will explain these stages in simple terms to help us understand how animated films and shows are created. So here are our learning objectives. First, let's discuss the step-by-step process in creating a 2D animation. Second, where we explain the role and responsibilities of key animators and in-betweeners in 2D animation production. Third, define the key stages in the 2D animation process. For example, concept, storyboarding, key animation, in-betweening, coloring, and compositing. So first, what is 2D animation? 2D animation occurs when we combine different pictures of different heights and widths together, which creates an illusion of movement in a two-dimensional world without any depth. Now you might ask why we call this 2D animation. That's because width and height are the only two variables and dimensional elements. There are different genres of animation which we'll cover in the next section. So, 2D animation is when you make drawings move. It uses pictures that only have height and width, like cartoons drawn on paper or on a computer. When you draw a character many times with small changes and play the drawing fast, it looks like the character is moving. In simple terms, 2D animation equals many drawings plus small changes plus shown quickly equals movement. It's like a flip book but done on paper or on a computer. So, there are various ways of breaking down 2D animation style, but in the most basic way, it all comes down to subcategories. So, first we have traditional animation. Traditional animation, also known as hand drawn animation or classical animation, is an animation technique where all the frames used to create the illusion of motion are first drawn on paper and consequently done by hand. So when we say traditional animation, is ganing magdraw ka sa any kwan, or for example sa band paper, magdraw ka using hand. So traditional na siya. Dayon ang kana imong pagdraw sa kanang band paper kay na siya process, like for example taw-taw, dayon imo siya naghigda siya, then imo siya anam-anam og like pabangon gani. So mao na siya ang kuan sa traditional drone siya. So art sa modern animation. Unlike the traditional method, modern 2D animation is all about computers and their ability to take things further when it comes to creating an animation. Along with that, different 2D animation software is developed which gives the option of creating characters and backgrounds and animating them all together. So, unlike sa modern animation kay kanang pero sa to karon, mas more on digital na ang modern animation. So diha na ka sa modern, diha na ka magamit og mga computer which is mapadali siya imong pagkuan sa animation. Kay kani siya nag-use naman ka og digital unlike sa kanang traditional nga i-draw pa nimo using imong kamot. Pero sa modern magamit gyapon kag kamot but sa computer na ka. That's the difference between traditional and modern animation. Now let's move on to what is the 2D animation creation process step-by-step guide. Now we're going to explain and break down the workflow of 2D animation. However, it's worth mentioning that every animated movie has been made in a different way, with different techniques and devices. There are no correct or unique way to animate, and the steps explained below aren't always followed in the same order. So we have specifically broken down the production process of 2D animation into three parts. So again, we have different stages, which has its own purpose. First, we have pre-production, the production, and the post-production. So in pre-production in 2D animation is the planning stage before the actual animation works begins. In simple words, it's where you plan everything, the story, characters, the styles, and scenes to make sure the animation runs smoothly. So, sa pre-production, before ka mag-create og excuse me, before ka mag-create og animation, syempre magplano isa jud ka og unsa imong gusto nga theme or concept kana sa imong animation. So, sa pre-production stage kay kanang dapat before ka mo kinang like for example mo finalize sa imong animate dapat naka-prepared na ang everything, naka-plan na. Mao na siya ang pre-production. So, ang production, this is where the actual animation is created based on all the planning and pre-production. It's the part where drawing comes to life. So, ang kaning production, dili na nagsugod tanan. Humana, so sa pre-production, humana plano. So sa production, dili na ka magsugod. Kay nakakuha naman ka, og unsa nga character imong gamiton, naka-prepare na ka sa kanang mga colors, unsay kanang music nga imong ito na during sa animation nimo. Mao na siya ang production. Which is, dili na nga ang gid-drawing nimo, mo comes life na siya. So, ari na ta sa last, post-production. This is where everything is polished and finalized after the animation is done. It is where you add sound, effects, and make sure everything looks and sounds perfect. So, ang post-production, mo na ni siya ang like, na-finalize na jud siya tanan. Like, sa pre-production, nagplano pa ka. Sa production, kay ang character kay ni comes to life na. Pero ang sa post-production kay mo na siya tanan, like finalize na siya, wala na siya kinahanglan nga kanang kuanon sa imong animation. Mo na siya ang post-production. Now, let's move on to pre-production stage. So, in pre-production stage, we have, I think, four stage. So first we have finding inspiration. To make an animated movie or any movie in general, you need to think of a story first. So before ka mo create og animation, syempre mag-find sa ka og inspiration og unsa nga kanang animation imong buhaton, like sa character. For example, sa character nimo kay halang like wait sa or like for example like kanang Sophia the First kana nga story diha ka magkuha ng inspiration, magkuha kag inspiration diha sa Sophia the First nga kanang cartoons. So kana siya naka-find naman kag inspiration, move na ta sa ikaduha, developing an idea. So it's not time for the director and producer to get together and think the changes we want to add the story. We have So, sa developing an idea, human naman kag find sa imong inspiration ug unsa nga story mong gusto buhaton sa animation nimo. Sa developing idea, ang kanang director sa animators or sa mag-animate kay kanang nanan sila idea nga kani nga story atong kanon kay kay inspiration na to Sophia the First. So kanang ila idea kuan na diha. Third is finalizing the script. So in this stage, all the dialogues of the animation are written. So dili man sad ka kanang lahos-lahos ug kanang buhat sa imong animation og wala dili na mo finalize imong script. So dapat before ka mo buhat sa imong animation, dapat naka-prepare na ang script. Kompleto na. Dayon, scheduling the production. Delivery date, preliminary date, crew plan, recruiting, and budget. So, kana siyang scheduling the date kay kano saan mo siya ipagawas, kanang dapat ang budget ana sa kanang animation. I know kay magbuhat kag animation kung sa jud ta kasuway no, basta mao na siya scheduling the production. Kanang i-organize nimo ang workflow, kinsa imong i-assign ana sa kanang kana nga part, like kanang og kuan pa, like sa work pa kanang kani ikaw ani sa kanang para sa budgeting ayan na ba, like naka-i-assign nga tao asa sila nga part sa story or sa script sa animation. Mao na siya ang 4 pre-production stage. So we are done reporting the pre-production stage. Now let's move on to production stage, which will be reported by Miss Novian. Thank you.
So good day everyone. So I will be discussing to you the 6 production stages of 2D animation.
So we have designing, composing the theme songs, storyboarding, concept art, voice recording, and animating.
So first is designing. This is where we create the looks of every characters and the places they live in. Also here, we decide how they looks before anything moves. And the second stage will be composing the theme song. Here, musicians create main song or music that sets the mood of the animation. It helps define the story's feeling and style. And the third stage is storyboarding. Storyboards are like comic version of the whole animation. They show each scene so everyone knows what will happen and how will it work. Good. And the fourth stage will be concept of art. Concept of art sets the overall style, the colors, mood, and visual tone. It also helps the final look of the animation. And the fifth stage will be voice recording. So voice recording, actors record the characters' voices. These recordings guide the animators when matching map shapes and emotions. And now we will be moving to the final stage, animating. This is where drawings finally move. K-animators create the main poses and in-betweeners fill the gaps to make the motion smooth.
Post-production stages. First, inking and coloring. Second, background. Third, visual effects. Fourth, sound design.
The first stage of post-production stage is inking and coloring. When all the scenes have been animated, they are taken to the inking department. That is where they pass the pencil sketches into a celluloid. A celluloid is a thin, clear sheet of transparent plastic. The second stage is background. The backgrounds are the sets where the action of each animated sequence takes place. The stage is visual effects. Sometimes, a sequence requires some type of animation that would be very difficult to do by hand, and that is when we use computer effects. They are used for many different things.
Example of ink and coloring and visual effects. The sound designs create and record sound effects,